Can you explain about the 4 versions of William Branham's angelic commission story again? I would like to know more about the second version where he was in his living room. How do you know that there is that second version? And I believe this question came from someone who was trying to understand back when we did how the angel came to me. We said there were 4 versions of the angelic commission: the 1945 version, the in my room version, the in a cabin version, and then the in a cave version. So you got the 4 versions, and they were wanting to understand why we thought the in my room version was different from the cave or the cabin.
Yeah, you can tell this also is from somebody who was in the cult. We mentioned this in one of the previous questions, but if you have a person who makes a false claim and you suddenly realize it's false, if you're not brainwashed and manipulated, you're just going to leave and ignore every single thing that the person has said forever because they just lied to you. But if you're in the cult and they make a false claim and you learn it's false, and then they've got another claim, well, your mind immediately tries to say, well, let's ignore the false one. He made this other claim and it was true. And then you'll defend that claim until somebody can prove it's false. And then you say, well, no, he's got this other claim. Well, it's true. And that's the way brainwashed individuals think. It's sad, but that's the way that they think. I've been trying to think how best to talk about this. The simple answer is we got it from his recordings. He talks about it himself on the transcripts. You can go back to one of our previous podcast episodes and we actually, on the video feed, we actually show the text of it so you can see where he got it. But the problem, like I said, I'm addressing a different question than the one was asked because this is coming from a person who's probably going through that, trying to reconcile how they've been lied to. Well, Charles, if you were to commission me to build you a shelf for your living room, and I come home and I tell my wife, I've been commissioned to build a shelf, and I go in my garage and I start building it, and then you call me again and you say, John, I'm commissioning you to build me a shelf for my living room. And I say, okay, I'm in the garage, I'm building it, Charles. I'll build you the shelf. You call me again 10 minutes later, John, I am commissioning you to build a shelf for my living room. I'm going to start saying, Charles, look, man, I'm in the garage. I've got the wood on the saw. I'm cutting it. Let me build it. You'll be fine. And then you call me back 10 minutes later, John, I'm commissioning you to build a shelf for the living room. Well, that's what happens with William Branham. If you just go to table.branham.org, which is the cult headquarters transcripts, just type in the word commission. And you're going to see, I commission you to heal the sick. I commission you again to heal the sick. I commission you another time to heal the sick. I commission you another time. One of the best books that lays this out is Peter Deiser's Legend of the Fall. That's the first time I actually never noticed it until he pointed it out. He's commissioned left and right. Here's a commission. Here's another commission. You get a commission. You get a commission too. It reminds me of Oprah. You get a car. You get a car. Somebody sent me one of the earliest pamphlets that William Branham, I think this is a 1945 pamphlet. William Branham is commissioned to heal the sick without even an angel. So, and in this pamphlet, he talks about he is commissioned 2 times in the same pamphlet to heal the sick. One time, I think it's 1936, if I'm looking at the dates correctly in this book. 1936 was the earliest. Then again, 1945. And then if you look, they don't talk about this one in the cult. But if you look at the transcripts, there's another one. There's angels, there's demons, there's all kinds of weird commissions. But the simple answer is, if you're looking for it, go to the transcripts, type in commission.
Yeah, if you want to check out Peter Deiser's book, it is really good. And you're right, John. I mean, he documents the dozen different times William Branham, I think more than a dozen times that William Branham claimed that he was commissioned. And yeah, and it is kind of bizarre. Like, how many times does a man need to be commissioned? It's odd, right? It is odd. And I understand the question too, about the four different versions, because, the 1945 version, that's very clearly wrote in, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision. The cabin version is very clearly documented, like in his book, A Man Sent from God. And then the cave version is William Branham extensively told that on tape. So all three of those versions are very clear. And I think when we did the episode on this, we mentioned that the second version was the most obscure one, just because there's the least on it. But the reason that we would suggest to you that it is a separate version is because there are details in that which cannot fit with either a cabin or a cave, and also don't fit with the 1945 version. And he also doesn't say he's in a cabin or a cave in that version. He says, I'm in my room. And let me just read you one quote from one of the times he told this version. And these are the very first times he told this on tape, is this version. And I'll just kind of point out a detail to you here. He says in his sermon, The Angel of God from 1947, he says, a little over 2 years ago, so notice that put it in 1945, right? A little over 2 years ago, which is when the I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision tract came out. A little over 2 years ago, I was sitting in the room, right? I was reading the little Schofield Bible, and I heard something. He just says, I was sitting in the room. He doesn't tell you where he's at, other than he's sitting in a room. But he says, I heard something. First, I saw a light, and I thought it was an automobile that turned the corner. But it was not. But it turned, but it got brighter, and I looked out the door, and there was no automobile. Okay, now, if William Branham was in a cave, do you think he'd be opening a door to go look to see if an automobile turned the corner? No. Okay, so it don't fit the cave one. And if you put it, for example, with the cabin one, the cabin story, he's out in the middle of the wilderness, and he had to hike back there to get there. There's no street for a car to be turning a corner, right? So the details of these stories do not fit with cabin or cave, right? And this is like the hybrid where he's going from the 1945 version, because he's putting this in 1945, is the hybrid between that and the transition to the cabin version. And the reason we would suggest to you this is his home on Ewing Lane is because if you know where his home on Ewing Lane is, it's right at a street corner where if a car turned the corner, the light would shine right through the windows in his home on Ewing Lane. So the internal evidence in the story would suggest to us that he is in his room or in his home on Ewing Lane, and a car turns the corner and shined a light through his window, and so this is what he thought it was. So I just hope you catch that. So that is why we would say that second version is a distinct version that's neither cabin nor cave nor 1945. And at the end of the day, John, if you don't want to, if you want to merge that in with the cabin version, I mean, I think that's reasonable if you wanted to do that. But you still got three versions of the story. and you still got an angel that told him things that are not true and misquoted the Bible and told him a false prophecy. So no matter what you do with that detail, the story fails on other points. And I would not hang the angelic commission being false simply on this one little detail of the second version. I would hang it being false on just the whole broad scope, right? You've got all of these different versions, and you've got an angel misquoting the Bible and an angel telling him he's going to go do things that he never actually did, right? And then you've got these really dramatic changing versions over time. So for me, it's just a really huge, big red flag that there is something seriously wrong with the angelic commission story.
For me, it's this simple. If somebody told you that it was a matter of life or death, that you go out to this road and turn right and go past a cave, and then you confirm it with them and you say, okay, so I'm going out to the road and I'm turning right and I'm going out past the cave. And they says, no, I want you to go out and I want you to turn left and go by a cabin. And then you say, well, I just want to confirm this because you told me just a second ago, turn right. And you ask them a third time and they say, no, it's a matter of life or death that you come into my living room. Well, at some point, you have to believe that this is not a matter of life or death because this person clearly has a problem and you would ignore everything that he said. But if you're brainwashed in this cult, Charles, you believe it is a matter of life or death, and you believe all of these things. So you're literally going to go left, right, living room, wherever you want to go. And it's like so many things in the message. There are so many things that if you take the one thing that he said and then take another thing that he said and try to mix them together, the details just can't go together. And so they're completely false.
Just one more point, John, on this, which is a point I think we've probably made before, but if you take the original 1945 version in that I was not disobedient, he gets his commission, he goes and he heals Reverend Doherty's daughter. You take the In My Room version that he tells in 1947, the angel comes to him in 1945 in that version, and then he goes to St. Louis, he heals Reverend Doherty's daughter. When you come to the cabin version, like in A Man Sent from God, the angel comes to him in 1946 in this version, and then he goes to St. Louis and heals Reverend Doherty's daughter. Or you go to the cave version, right, which is supposed to happen either 47 or 48, depending on the version. The angel comes to him in the cave, and then he goes to St. Louis and heals the Reverend Doherty's daughter. Right? The detail that is consistent across all the versions, and he don't always tell the story end to end, but when you get each version end to end, he always goes at the end to St. Louis and he heals Reverend Doherty's daughter. Well, we know that actually did happen in 1945. She was healed of St. Vitus dance, which is a non-chronic condition which people generally spontaneously recover from anyway. He went and she was healed of St. Vitus dance in 1945, according to all the evidence, right? The newspaper articles, the testimony of her father and other family that we've talked to as well. So he went there in 1945. And so that is ultimately the piece that points you back that 1945 version, I was not disobedient, is the one closest to the truth, because that is at what actually did happen in 1945.
Right. And I will mention that in this, there is no angel. In this commission, there is no angel. So the angel was introduced after this publication was printed.